Good evening, Internet. Welcome to the Shifting Lanes Garage podcast. Yes, podcast. I'm Chad. With me, as always, is the Gregson. No guest this week, so it's just me, Greg, and you in chat. This should be a fun night. We've got a lot of really awesome topics to talk about, and of course, interacting with you guys. If you're listening to this, we're live every Wednesday night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. Hoping to grow those to other platforms soon. But come join the conversation. It's a good time. You should totally do it. Greg, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing wonderfully. How are you, good sir?
I am doing awesome. Sorry, just in case you were wondering, guys, we are also now live on Instagram. I finally got that working.
Ooh, hooray! That is actually excellent news because we have we've grown a lot on Instagram this year, quite frankly. That's something we were talking about sort of in our Shifting Lanes chat on Facebook. And I actually ran the numbers, and I forgot to mention this to you and Hanson on our chat, but I went on Social Blade, not sponsored, which is just a great tool for checking out metrics if you're on social media and you want to, know how you're doing and you're trying to be a creator or whatever. And I checked our metrics on Instagram because they do have Instagram metrics, pretty basic stuff. But you can also look at YouTube. You can look at Twitter, now X, and I think there's Twitch stuff on there as well. But looked at our Instagram stuff. We were at 8,700 followers in May/June. We are now at 48,000 followers, more than 48,000 on Instagram, which is just insane. So thank you all for getting on that platform and following us and watching our stuff, just like you guys do here on Facebook and Instagram, and now on the podcasting networks as well. So it's pretty insane to see, quite honestly. Even on TikTok, we're going to be hopefully live on there soon too. And if you want to do this live and follow us live, like Chad said, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on hopefully all four of those very soon. But on TikTok, we started in January, and we're already over 23,000 followers on there. So clearly what we're doing is resonating with you guys. So we're going to keep doing more of it and keep talking to you guys about cars. We really are enjoying it, quite honestly. I think I've said quite honestly a bunch, but it is from the heart because we didn't expect any of this to sort of, quote unquote, blow up. Like, we're not blowing up like other creators really have in the past, but it's pretty cool to see. I love seeing everything grow and seeing everyone interact in a very cool way and just open the conversation more.
Yes, it's fantastic. And we're off the air on Instagram, by the way.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, so I was looking at it, and it's only in vertical format.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it was just me and half of you. So
nice.
Next week, we will definitely be giving that a better go. Mostly because... and also, I need to learn how to fucking mute Instagram because I couldn't find a mute button in their live. Their live producer is very rudimentary. It's quite infuriating. But yeah, what were you talking about? Oh, right. Steve, how you doing? Doug, how you doing? Christmas was good for us. Your kid was expensive. Yeah, that's why I don't have them.
Yes, can confirm. Having 1/2 children, very expensive, but we also do not give them a metric ton of stuff. So they get many small things and one big thing, really. And the one big thing is not really that expensive. It's usually a $40 to $60 item at most. There will be no PS5s for a 6 and 4-year-old in this household, at least for now. Until maybe when they're a little older, but right for now, there's none of that stuff happening around us. Can't hear you, Chad.
Get a PS5 when the PS6 comes out.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be on PS6, maybe even PS7 by the time they get one.
Who knows? Maybe they'll get one of Uncle Chad's hand-me-down gaming PCs.
Ooh, that would be nice. Maybe that would be good. Oh, and very funny. When I was putting Everett to bed tonight, because I've tried to tell them on Wednesdays that I talked to Mr. Chad on the internet about cars, and they seem to get a kick out of that. And Everett just goes, "When do I get to talk to Mr. Chad about cars and the internet?" And I'm like, "Buddy, we can set up a date. I'm sure he would be very happy to talk to you about
that would be
cars."
interesting as hell. It's funny. So right around Thanksgiving, my niece and nephew came over, and my nephew is like one of those, 7-year-olds who's like, I want to be a influencer. It's like, ugh.
Well, they say that, and then take him to VidCon, and they'll be like, "Oh, I don't want to do this anymore."
Well, wait, just wait. So I'm like, that's great. So I go back into my room. I'm kind of doing my thing, or my office, I should say. And I just hear out of the corner of my ear, they're literally playing YouTube. So like, he's literally sitting in front, like we have this toy phone, and he's having his sister hold the phone, and he's thanking everyone. He's like, we just got our play button, blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God.
And I'm just listening to this. So I'm like, you ever hear of Shifting Lanes? He's like, what? And I'm like, never mind. So over Christmas, we're talking about
great.
it and everything. And then his father, my brother-in-law, goes, do you know Uncle Chad's on YouTube? And he's like, I've told my car about playing sports, like all this stuff. He's like, yeah, whatever. You're on YouTube. How many subscribers do you have? I go, about 95,000 if you combine both channels. He's like, oh my gosh, when do you get your play button? I go, well, when in about 10,000 more subs on the main channel. Oh my, can I see? He was so excited about it. Like, I suddenly became his hero because I happened to do this stuff.
Well, it's so funny to talk about, because this is really like the new television, because you see all these people, on the big screen, right? And it's a big deal to kids. When we were kids, we see a movie star or we see a TV star in public, if you ever do, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've seen them on TV, or I've seen them in a movie, and yada yada yada. So, being around New York, I've been able to spot a couple. I saw A-Rod when he was on the Mariners in Seattle when I was visiting my family out there when I was really young. This was, obviously being on the Mariners a long time ago. And I was like, whoa, that's A-Rod. That's so cool. But like, kids watch YouTube, and where do they watch YouTube? On screens, or maybe on a TV, or maybe, on a tablet or something. And like, where do they watch TV now? On a tablet, on the phone, on a TV maybe. Where do they watch movies? Same places. So kids are relating YouTube to stardom now. And quite frankly, again, I gotta really stop saying that. People are stars on YouTube now. I mean, look at, KSI, Logan Paul, in the car community, Tavares, Doug DeMuro. Like, people see these people out on the streets and they're like, oh my gosh, I watch all your stuff, blah, 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 blah. Like, they're famous. And, it's funny, and Doug just mentioned it in chat. You two are the biggest celebrities my daughter has met so far. Being a YouTuber is a big deal to her. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it is a big deal to a lot of people. And it's still strange to me. It's very cool, and I love going to Carlisle specifically, and people coming up to me like, hey, I saw your YouTube channel, love the stuff you do on Shifting Lanes and blah blah blah, can I get a picture? And I'm like, yeah, of course. What do I do? Like, it's still odd, but it's also really, really cool.
It still doesn't make a ton of sense to me when people, like, I remember when we went to the Dragon event with the C30 guys, people just coming up, and they've been like, this is awesome, blah blah blah, I got this car because of blah blah blah, like, and they're going on and on and on, and they're like, well, what do you think about, like, and they ask me all these like super crazy detailed questions about the car, and I just like, how do I tell them I have no idea? Like, I was like, you know how you find me on the internet with your car? Guess what I do? I just happen to have a Rich Forsyth in my corner.
I tell them I've had people come to me like, hey, can I talk to you about my car? Like, sure, but let me preface this. I don't know every single in and out of this car. Yeah, I'm not an expert. I just play one on television.
So anyway, my nephew's like, so how do I do this? How do I blah 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 blah? And I go, well, it's a lot of work, bud. And then like, I instantly saw the look on his face, and I'm like, I just kicked this kid's puppy. He goes, well, what do you
Oh, no.
what do you mean, blah blah blah? And I'm like trying to explain it to him, and I'm like, Well, and I'm like trying to be like, all right, so how do I spend this? He goes, yeah, but don't worry about it, bud. You got time. He's like, well, what if I want to? I'm like, don't worry. Mom and Dad would get all the money you make anyway. And he's like, oh, okay. Just like, but like I asked,
Yeah, because there are literally laws that say that 15% gets put aside for you, and the rest is sort of up for grabs.
and then and I'm like, well, who do you watch? And he's like, Mr. Beast. Like everyone watches Mr. Beast.
Yeah, like don't start with that one. We all do. We all want to figure out what he's doing.
Yeah,
Jimmy is the man. We all want to be Jimmy.
yeah. I mean, I remember I forget what it was, but I was watching something a bunch of years ago, and he was talking about like just the amount of money he puts into like each video, and it's just like
Oh yeah,
obscene. It's like
it's millions.
yeah, it's like it's a legitimate TV show that just happens to be on the
Yeah,
internet. It's insane.
yeah. Well, he's a really good mentality about it. Like he loves doing that, like the philanthropy stuff and giving stuff away because he uses my guess, and I think he's talked about it before, but I forget what. But my guess is that he utilizes the money that he makes on the YouTube channel to make the videos, and then uses sponsor stuff and like all the other things, the Feastable stuff, Mr. Beast bars, Mr. Beast Burger, and all these other like companies that he's done, and utilizes that to then pay him, his staff, and give away money and give away that stuff. So that way he's very easily divested in different ways to do it. And the one thing that he does really well is he always asks, how can I make it a better video? Instead of just being like, oh, well, how can I profit more from this video? Instead of, because the profit is obviously there. Like the better the video you make, the profit's going to come. So it's just a really good mentality. I think we've taken a lot of that mentality into the shorts we've been making. It's like, okay, well, how can we make better shorts? Well, let's try different things. You've been doing a lot of car stories and motorsport stories, and that seems to be doing really nicely. Okay, well, you can focus there because you're really good at it. Car news, like we randomly did a couple car news things, and I'm like, oh, these seem to be hitting well. How can I do this better? And it's different photos, different news stories, diversity of news, instead of just like focusing on just trucks or just Volvos or whatever. You really find different things to talk about, and people seem to be resonating it. And that sort of goes back to like the beginning of the conversation. Like we've seen a lot of growth on Instagram and TikTok because of it. And I think, we have access to cars too. And Hanson does like guess the car, and here's cool things about cars we drive around, and here's a 60-second reviews. Like we hit on like everything. So I'm not surprised we're growing. It's just a really nice thing to see. And I like that we're taking that mentality of like, how can we make it better, and actually executing on that, which is fun to it's fun to do and fun to see too.
I was watching. So I don't know how much of the. Oh, Steve, thank you for the research money to make Mr. Beast money. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
That $1 will be used very wisely to buy me a coffee to stay awake and think of ideas.
But I don't know if you know with like the whole Wheel Pros and what's going on with like Hoonigan, and how there seems to be like there's like an exodus of talent leaving Hoonigan.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that.
It's just mostly because it's become more but Vin was talking about, and his whole thing was like on the marketing side of it. So he handled a lot of the brand deals, the sponsorships, etc. And it wasn't one of those things where they wanted to make their content and happen to get a sponsor. They wanted to make the best content for the viewer with the sponsor's help, or with utilizing that particular sponsor, right? I think a lot of people get it twisted that people like we're way bigger than us, not necessarily just us, but like when you say YouTube, it's like, oh, you're just in it to make money. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a big part of it. But if you're not making content that resonates, or you're not keeping your viewers first, you're not going to make anything. It's just the way it is.
Right. You have to make something that people are going to want to watch, or else nothing's going to happen. But to that point, you also have to make something that you want to watch and you want to make. So there's that end of it too. So if you're not making something that you yourself wouldn't watch, then don't make it.
100%. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, at that point, why do it?
Right. Well, like, what's the point? Like, go use your talents or money or interests or time elsewhere. Focus more on your family. Do you like woodworking? Well, go do a woodworking thing instead of a car thing. So it's just bring passion to it, and I think the passion will show.
Right. If it's one of those things like any sort of entertainment, right? When we watched the horsepower or whatever morning shows on TV back in the day, it wasn't like these guys are like, well, I guess today we'll work on a Chevy small block. This sucks. Okay, here's what you want to do. Like, no, you could see that their passion came
Right.
through. Show like all the good shows like that when it really started becoming quote unquote reality.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of what it is or what it was or what it became, American Chopper, people watched it because there was genuine passion and the people were real ish.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we gotten in an argument with our father over something that we were doing, like with a project in the house or something, right? I mean, they took it to an
Right.
extreme, but, and anyway,
Yeah.
anywho, before we, before we dive into tonight's topic, I have to step away for a second.
Yep. No problem.
Dog
Because
fun.
Yeah, no, all good. You go take care of that. I will carry the conversation for a hot second because Hanson sent us something very interesting today that I will talk about. It's the F type. And Chad, you can chime in on that when you're back. Um, so, as we all sort of know, used car prices are coming down, which is great. And used car prices are coming down sort of across the board. And it's not just sports cars, it's sort of commuter cars as well. So um, that is really fantastic news for basically everyone. Um, the the biggest thing is what can you get for your money now? And I've been tracking specifically F-type prices because I've been in love with this car, as most of you that are watching know. I've talked about this many times, but those of you that are listening now, if you are listening, thank you for listening. Is I've been in love with the F-Type R, specifically the R trim, since it came out in 2014. We saw it at the New York Auto Show, and it may have been a bit of a placebo effect in a way because 2014 was our first ever auto show as Shifting Lanes. We've again talked about this ad nauseum on the stream, but again, to those of you that are listening for the first time and not heard this story, we started as a website in 2013. It was myself, and still is myself, Chad, and Hanson. And we decided that we're the three car people in our group of friends and we should start a business together and start a website because why not? So we did. And then in 2014, I was like, well, could we get into the New York Auto Show on press passes instead of having to go with the normal riffraff? And if you've ever been to the New York Auto Show on a public day, it is a catastrophic shit show. There are way too many people there, and it is impossible to get any sort of photo or video with a car. It's absolutely horrible. So we tried to get in, and we got in, and we said, hey, we make money through our website, through Google's AdSense program, and blah blah blah. And we put banner ads on our site, and I think the stipulations where you have to make money through the business that you talk about with cars, and there has to be a good following. And at that time, we were getting 5,000-10,000 views a month, and we're like, okay, well let's try it. So we got in. So we saw all the cool cars that year. Saw some cool car unveilings, which was really neat because the one that I remember the most was, speaking of celebrities, John Hamm was there to unveil the new S Class. It was either S Class or S Class AMG. I forget which. Long story short, the F Type was unveiled for the U.S. Publicly, I believe, at that show, or it was there at least. And we saw it in person, and I fell head over heels in love with this car. Has happened to me very few times in my life where I'm just like, oh my God, I have to have this. So getting back to the point, Hanson sent us in our Shifting Lanes chat today an F-Type R that was only 38,990 with about 40,000 miles on it. And like I said, I've been tracking these prices. They've been consistently bottoming out around 40 to 45K, even in the pandemic shenanigans. They got up to like 50K for about the same sort of thing, but it wasn't that outlandish to even consider this car at 50K, even with all the insanity of the pandemic, because you're getting a lot of car. You're getting a 550 horsepower supercharged V8 with an AJ block that has it's a tried and true engine. It's a tried and true block. It's a tried and true platform. It's an updated version of what was carried over from the last year or two. I want to say last maybe year of the XKR, the outgoing XKR, which was also made in 2015 when the F-Type was unveiled. So it is interesting to see that these are now coming down consistently under 40K. And you can look on any platform. You can look on Car Gurus. You can look on cars.com, Auto Trader. This one's from Carvana that you're seeing on screen. It's white with black wheels, and it's got a cream and black two-tone interior, which isn't the worst, but it's also not great. Either way, things are fixable. It's got some light scratches, yada, yada, yada. For 39 grand, essentially, you're getting an insane amount of car. You're getting a front end Grand Touring sports car with over 550 horsepower. That is a significant amount of car for that price, considering that you can probably get a fully loaded Toyota Camry for more than this. Or, I mean, it's just an insane amount of car for the money. Steve just goes, I'm not into Jaguar, to be honest. And not a lot of people are. Most people would pick something else as their front-end Grand Tourer over an F-Type. It's just the way this car looks, the way it has a bit of an homage to the E-Type, the way it sounds, the luxuriousness of it, the design is just timeless. I feel one of the coolest things we noticed was wow, that is a very fast 360 you're doing there, Chad. Ah! Jesus. Chad's spinning it on screen as fast as he humanly can, and it's giving me a headache. But if you actually scroll it or drag it around to the back, the exhaust tips in this car, and Chad, I remember you pointing this out to me, they're pointed up a little bit, which is a nod to the E-Type. So the E-Type didn't just have a flat exhaust tip. It had the exhaust and then the tips were pointed up just a little bit. And the same thing, you can see a little bit more from like the back three quarters is the exhaust tips are tilted up just ever so slightly. And it's very cool. It's just that nod to their history in a very, very, slight way, which I find very cool. I just find this car very beautiful. I love the tail lights. I love the headlights. The design's great. The interior's comfortable. I've driven basically the entire range of R. And I've basically driven the entire range of F-Type. They've had them at past press days that we've done. Everything from the I think they put a four banger in this, I want to say. If not, it was a V6.
Four-cylinder, six-cylinder V8, supercharged V8.
Yeah. Right, that's right. So we've run the gamut of what this car is on the road and on the track, because we drove it at Monticello Raceway, or Monticello Motor Club. And honestly, like, I'm still sold on it. I think it's beautiful. It's fast. It makes all the right noises. The only downfall to this car is that the V8 doesn't have a manual. But if you want a manual, the V6 has a manual. And the V6 is an excellent car. It sounds great. It's one of the best sounding V6s ever made, and we all agree on that. It's a great car. So if you do want a manual, it has a manual option. I just like the V8 noises just because it sounds ridiculous. And for 39 grand, it's hard to argue against it, honestly.
At the end of the day, the V6, if they came out, because I remember I think it's like the something 400, where they had the 400 horsepower supercharged V6.
The P400. Yep.
Sounded insane, sounded awesome. At 400 horsepower is nothing to really roll your eyes at.
No.
And it was epic. But it's one of those things where there's always the bigger fish, right? For me, at least, it's the V8 sounds better than the 6. But this car with a 6-cylinder and those noises still would have been an epic machine. The fact that they put a V8 in it, the fact that it sounds like it does, it's hard to get into the 6 and be like, yep, this is all I need, for me at least, because it's like, there's the other one right over there.
Yeah, this is one of those cars where you're like, okay, the manual's in the V6. It's not in the V8, but the V8 is one of those cars where you sort of have to buy it because it's just that much better. And yes, it's an automatic, but it has, a paddle shifting, and the paddles are great. It's got the ZF8 speed that everything else has, and it's a fantastic transmission. It's still not a manual. It's not as engaging. That's not what I'm arguing. The V6 is a better engaging car with a manual, for sure. However, to your point, this existing trumps the manual, quite frankly, in my opinion.
Well, it's one of those things, right? Everybody was like, oh, the new GT500 doesn't have a manual. Blah, 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 blah. Number one,
yeah,
if you took Mustang GT owners and gave them 760 horsepower in a manual and said, go have fun, over half of them would be wrecked.
Dude, if you gave Mustang GT owners over 700 horsepower in an automatic, you could give them the exact same statistic. No, very few people know what to do with 700 horsepower at all.
Right, but the fact of the matter is that you're managing a clutch pedal ups the oops,
true,
I'm sideways factor.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. I'm furthering your point because I don't even think they can handle it in an automatic, let alone a manual.
But holy shit. Sorry.
Man, go to bed already. Jeez.
Yeah, I know. Greg's voice just puts me to sleep. We're going to be releasing
the soothing tones.
We're going to start releasing audiobooks, and it's just Greg talking, and it's going to help you get to sleep. At any rate, where was I?
Yeah, it's going to be our new ASMR stream.
Here's the thing. At the end of the day, and I know as a car guy, anyone watching is going to be like, blasphemer. But if a automatic, whether it be dual clutch, ZF8 speed, whatever it is, if I pull that paddle and it's immediately downshifting, like there's a sense of immediacy to it, I'm okay with it. If I pull that paddle and it's like some sort of like Indiana Jones in the law, where you pull a lever and then 15 minutes later the door opens, nah.
That's this thing.
So I don't mind, which is why like the
AMG,
all the Porsches I've driven with it, all the AMG GTs that I've driven with it, I don't mind it because it gives that motorsport feel of pulling the lever and things happening, not pulling the lever and then it feels like you're suggesting it's going to committee. There's a vote. There's a problem with the vote. They re-vote and then they decide to let you do what you want. That's kind of it.
There are certain cars where the quote unquote automatic is just better. This is one of them because it's attached to the V8 and it doesn't exist with a manual. If this had a manual, well, I mean, there's a clear choice there. However, it doesn't, and because of how this car is, it is the clear winner. I will say one thing. The V6 does have an ace up its sleeve now because of Velocity AP, which is cool. So Velocity AP now has forged internals, headers, and tunes and pulleys where you can make 550 horsepower with the V6.
Well, I mean, no, don't get me wrong. What does the V6? 3 liters? I mean,
yes.
I mean, we're in a day and age where depending on how much boost you want to go, a V6 can make as much as a V8. Four
Right.
cylinders can.
And I
Like,
mean,
it's just it's a question of preference. And like I said,
right. I
that
mean,
P400 or whatever I
90s
drove.
Japanese cars proved that you can have any V6 with power now.
Oh, I mean, let me put it to you this way: depending on what your wallet can handle, it doesn't matter. 4, 6, 5, 8, 10,
True.
whatever. If you have a power goal, they can make it. I mean, I think what's it called? Rob Ron at Hoonigan just did an Evo, 2.2 liter four
Oh
cylinder,
yeah.
making almost 700 wheel. I mean,
Right.
so we live in a day and age where it's just like, how do you want your power delivery? And that determines,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, here's the thing.
Correct. Yeah.
And then I'll touch on, because I see a few comments over in chat. But
Yes.
as sort of a plaything to go up against with the Mustang, I can't imagine. I mean, shock, another supercharged 5-liter V8 on the channel. No. But as far as like a plaything
Yeah.
for the Mustang, there's such good cars, and they like the design is just perfect. It's like one of those things where I honestly feel like they looked at the V8 Vantage, like the one you had, and modernized it a touch. It has the same proportions,
Yeah.
it has the same overhangs, it has the same like door to wheel ratios, if you will, and everything.
Yep.
It's just a timeless piece of design, and the fact that it has the oomph and the suspension and everything to go behind it, it's a total pack. I mean, absolutely. I think honestly,
Yeah.
say goodbye to the whatever you have to say goodbye to, and buy this tomorrow.
Yeah. Honestly, it's crossed my mind. Like the only thing that I would be hesitant on in purchasing this particular car is the reliability, but I've done extensive research on this, and there are only a few things that really kind of go on this. For first and foremost, this doesn't go, but the 2015s specifically are rear wheel drive only, so the rear diff is just it's a it's a heavily taxed item because it's 550 horsepower through a rear diff. So just keep up with your maintenance and you're fine, or have the rear diff replaced. And it's not that expensive considering, which is good. There are other things, like obviously it's a British car, and the reputation precedes itself. So the electronics are not the best in certain ways. There are also a couple of things that do go wrong with the car that are easily fixed. There are air vents in the middle, in the interior, that sometimes break and only go up halfway, but it's literally just a re-greasing issue. You just take it apart, re-grease the plastic gears, put it back together, and it works again. So again, there's little things that are more annoyances. The rest of the car is pretty solid, and for a Jaguar, it's one of the most reliable Jaguars ever made. So for that point and purpose, an F-Type R or an F-Type in general is an excellent purchase. Um, the only reason I say that is I would love to get mine from CarMax for the sole purpose of being able to have an extended warranty as a used car. And given that Doug DeMuro has done this already with a Range Rover that paid out close to like $15,000 to $20,000 worth of warranty stuff. Again, this was an old Range Rover that it was horribly unreliable, but given his videos and knowing that they do pay out on warranty issues for cars that are bought through CarMax and things like that, that gives me more peace of mind for actually purchasing through them. It would be a bit more of an expense, but it would be better peace of mind because quite honestly, I wouldn't do much to this thing mechanically off the bat. It's got 550 horsepower. I wouldn't want to. I would do aesthetics first because they need more carbon fiber on them. They need more cool aero bits. wheels, lowered suspension, things like that. And then maybe go into like different pulleys, different tunes, different mapping through maybe velocity AP, things like that. Long story short, I would much rather have a warranty with a car like this, especially if like we buy it through, say, the business as opposed to personally. So just that way, it's just an added peace of mind. So that, oh well, the engine grenaded 2 days after I bought it because I was driving along and I was not racing it, and it just stopped. Like, well, if I didn't buy it through CarMax, kind of fucked at that point. So that in that respect, I'd much rather have that peace of mind. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, just going through some of these pictures, I see why this is inexpensive, comparatively speaking.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I don't know
it's
what it is,
scratched.
but like,
Like there's
what
lots
are
of there's
all
lots
of
of
these?
trim pieces.
What are all of these hairs? Like when you look at it, like
Oh
you see like next to the speaker. We're just looking at it, but like here in the joint,
yeah.
see the stains down here.
Yes. So here I can tell you exactly what this is. The buttons are known to become sticky because uh the surfacing of them when they made them were horrible. So there are button replacements for almost every button in this car, which again are very easy fixes. The little hairs you can see if you go back to that plastic trim piece, you can, or even the steering wheel, you can see there's little almost like wetness marks on some of the plastic trim pieces. What they did is they took an Armor All wipe and basically wiped down the interior, which is what those hairs are.
Yeah.
It's fibers from the wipes, basically.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to be like a wet blanket, but there's a lot. There's the little stuff like the grime right here in the upper right.
Oh yeah, there's a lot that you could fix up on this. You can get all new plastic trim pieces,
Carbon fiber.
if you really wanted
The
to,
staining.
for less than $300 for the entire car.
This is where I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? The staining right here in the middle, right below and left of the door handle.
Yeah.
I don't know. Here's the thing. It's a lot of car for not a lot of money, and like you said, a lot of that stuff can be addressed. Just real quick, we're going to hop over and see what a chat is saying. Let's see here. Doug agrees with Greg. The proportions are correct for sure. Steve goes, I'm that asset who would love a classic Mini Cooper with a roll cage setup and a beefed up drivetrain. 100% if you're into those types of minis. The MCM Mini with the B16B swap is a awesome build. Also, check out a bunch of them are running Busa motors, and those are an absolute riot. Doug goes, Viper would be my pick for this price range, but I like the Jag too. Depends on the Viper, which probably prompted this comment. Sad face says Vipers cost much more than this now. I didn't realize the values went up so much. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't touch a Viper for under 50 grand now, and that's the cheap stuff.
So when I was shopping for the Mustang, I was also shopping for a C6 Z06, as we've discussed previously. And right around that same time, and this is late 2019, so not that long ago. Obviously feels like a millennia ago because, the virus and all. But Vipers were like second gen GTS. So the first gen bodywork, but the coupe were $38,000. Then they started to skyrocket. But then you're like third and fourth generation Vipers. Those were the ones to buy because really they were better performance things, even though they probably weren't the best. They weren't bad looking, but they weren't as good looking as the first gen and then the last gen. And then GTS is now $60K without breaking a sweat, especially if you get a good one, which is insane because there's like a good one is just so happens to be clean. It's not like it's like, oh, it came with the crazy fancy seats and audio infotainment system, because it didn't have any of that fancy nonsense. Steve goes, I hate paddle shifting. Look, I get it. Push comes to shove, I'm always going to prefer a manual. That being said, If the car has the right gearbox, I'll consider it. Excuse me. If the car has the right gearbox, I'll consider it. But if it's not a good gearbox, nah. And I mean, it goes for manuals as well. Not all manuals are gifts sent from the heavens. You know, the MT82 in the Mustang is incredibly vague, sloppy, and prone to grenading itself. It's not.
Yeah. I'd rather have an automatic than that, quite frankly.
You know, which is one of the first. So the thing that delayed me getting the supercharger to me building the Mustang was waiting for that gearbox, was waiting for the financial might, as it were, to get the transmission. I think it was like $4,500 to get a built box, because it's 10 out of 10 so much better. Doug then follows up with, I have a buddy with the GTS. I like the Roadsters better, but I'll never turn down driving the GTS either. Good news, the Roadsters are the cheaper of those options. So, not that they're cheap, but they're the cheaper of those options.
True.
Doug, how do you want your power delivery? Through a manual transmission, please. And that's your right as an American. And as a car guy. You can like whatever the hell you like. You can dislike whatever the heck you dislike. I forget who mentioned it before who wasn't into Jags. That's okay. There's a reason why, you know, Greg and I have always had different tastes in cars. It doesn't mean that he's more wrong than usual. It just means he's his usual level of wrong. Fine. He's still a good guy.
I've come to terms with it at this point.
Doug asks, do Range Rover and Jag share a lot of parts given the Tata ownership? I mean, they've been sharing parts since the Ford days.
Yeah, it's been
what is it?
Since forever.
The SV whatever, SVR Range Rover is literally a Jaguar F-Type R engine.
Yep. Same engine. Yep. Exactly the same engine.
So, and then last two comments for Steve. British wiring is as garbage as the 90s Chrysler Jeep wiring. I already dealt with the dumpster fire. I'm good. I mean, not for nothing. Wiring and infotainment systems are what differentiates as far as quality of vehicles nowadays. You could say suspension plays a part of that as well. But from a mechanical standpoint, most class of car, you know, if you have that compare like a Kia to a Toyota to a Honda to a blah, mechanicals are all almost the same, just slightly different because a slightly different person designed it. But it's the answer to the same question. How do I get X amount of power at Y amount of efficiency? There's not that many answers to that question.
Yeah, and honestly, if you put, you know, Joe Schmo in any car from, you know, let's just say four-door sedans, put them in a Camry versus an Accord versus whatever Kia has these days. I want to say it's the K5. It used to be the Optima, versus Hyundai Sonata versus Ford Fusion from back in the day. They wouldn't be able to tell the difference in handling. They all handle basically the same. So for 99% of people out there, none of that matters. For those that are commuting and want the ease of use, exactly what Chad's point is, like the infotainment, the wiring, the ease of use, the user experience, and how the car functions is much more important than the mechanical bits, because the mechanical bits are unimportant to, you know, Joe Schmo commuter man. So for enthusiasts, like, we can tell the difference. Like, oh man, the Accord this year is super vague on its steering, but the Camry seems way tighter this year. You know, I'd much rather have the Camry over this. And that's why you have journalists that have the knowledge to be able to like discern those things and give you an opinion in journals, like of which is going to perform better. If a journal is coming out and saying, well, they're basically the same in infotainment. Well, if you're cross-shopping those things, get the better deal, because it's just whatever you can get for the least amount of money at that point.
100%. Where was I? And then lastly, Steve goes, Chad, I have an idea with your future rap. While you type that out, while you're typing that out, Greg is going to lay some news knowledge on us.
Ooh, yes. The news knowledge, man, there's been a lot these days. I knew that was coming. Um, I got a sweet love. Oh my God, what is that? Oh, there's the god of moisture, or whatever it is. Oh man. If you're listening to this and you're not watching us, you really got to be watching us for these hilarious jokes that chat, and our supporter group make in my in my at my expense. What you're seeing on screen is Tefnut, which I believe is the god of moisture. I think, as moist is my least favorite word in the English language. Um, but there's also a mini truck of me, a Chevy Love to be exact, of me hanging out the driver window. It says Love Machine spelled LUV underneath, which is just the best and also the worst. Um, Speaking of Rich Forsyth, Moose Tech One over on YouTube has joined the chat. Rich, good to see you. I think it's either Rich or Kevin. So hopefully it's either of you guys. Hopefully it's both. Welcome and thanks for tuning in, guys. Miss you guys. Haven't heard from you in a while. We'll have to get together and chat soon. But Rich goes heard some need to broke their Mustang. I don't know what that means,
I think
but
he's
I would
referencing the
imagine
drag strip video where we blew the exhaust off of it.
yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
yada yada
Crazy.
yada. I've never had that problem with the Volvo. I guess they just can't make real horsepower. Blah blah blah. You know, if I'm going to be a jackass about it, but
Yes.
but yeah, hey Rich, thanks for tuning in, man. We got to get you on the show one of these
Good
days.
news. Yes, definitely. We'll get Rich on, and we'll have a very knowledgeable Volvo guest. We'll dive deep into the Volvo stuff. But for right now, we have some very interesting news because it involves more cheating. And many years ago, obviously, this was big news from VW. VW was the one that was like doing all these diesel cheats, and they got caught, and lots of just really negative press towards VW. Now it looks like the EPA here in the US is really cracking down on diesels, specifically diesel cheating software, where it's emissions cheating software, saying that they give better MPG than they do, and sort of going around a lot of the restrictions. So a very big name in the space just got slapped with the largest single fine in history under the Clean Air Act, and it's Cummins. And you all should know who Cummins is because they make lots of diesel engines. And researching the reel that I just put out today on it, it actually, they do a lot more than that. They make natural gas engines, they make hybrid engines, and of course they make diesel engines, but they also are expanding into the electrification space. So, interestingly enough, with that said, they were slapped by the EPA for $1.67 billion. That is billion with a B. So that is an insane amount of money. However, I have a counterpoint to that. But here's what they've basically said. 630,000 Ram trucks. I believe it's mostly 2500s, 3500s, and 1500s. 1500s from 2013 to 2019, and 2500 and 3500s from 2019 through 2023. So model years 2013 through 2023, depending on the model. With that said, they have been accused by the EPA of installing emissions cheating software on all of these, and a recall notice has been sent out to those affected. Now, $1.67 billion is an absurd amount of money, and it's more than most companies make, quite honestly. It is a lot, and it's just very interesting to see the EPA starting to crack down on this now, because they've had this in effect for a long time, and I know that they've been trying to crack down harder on it with through the enthusiast community with tuners and saying, oh well, you're tuning the car outside of what the OEM spec is. That's going around the rules. So it's a big uproar from the tuning community and a lot of this other stuff trying to combat this and say, look, we're not going around emissions. We're trying to make more power with the mechanicals that we've been given. So it's it's huge news. But my counterpoint to this, and Chad can attest to this when he comes back, is Cummins is actually a way bigger company than I thought they were, because they make all this stuff, but they also do, contracting for engines, not just in the automotive space. They make a shit ton of stuff everywhere else. So, what do you think the amount of money Cummins made in 2023 is, or in the last year from September to September? Chad, question. What do you think that number is?
Right around $30 billion.
Yes, I know, because I told you. But yes, 33 point something billion dollars. Now, $1.67 billion is roughly 5% of what they've done. However, it seems like it's sort of a hand slap. And it's not even like that big of a hand slap, because $33 billion is what they made in the last year.
Hold on. Is that
they have not made?
Is that $33 billion just their gross income, or is that profit?
Total revenue.
So that's before expenses. So we don't know what their margin is.
True, we don't know what the margin is.
If you say $1.6 billion or whatever the number was, is 5%, to I don't know what his name is, Christian von Horatio Cummins. One big.
Please, I hope that's his name.
Fun fact: one of the guys who used to play at my golf course was the nephew of Mr. Cummins.
Oh, interesting.
And but the point I'm trying to make is that if they're working on if they're okay, like a 5% margin is $1.6 billion. That's not a small amount of money, right? So if they just got whacked with their profit margin, that's a big deal. Or if that's half their profit margin, like, you know what I mean? So it's like sitting here saying, oh, Shifting Lanes makes $11 billion a year. God, I hope one day. But they got slapped with a $2 billion fine. Well, our margins might have only been $500 million. So now we're $1.5 million in trouble, right? But before I dive too deep into that level of minutia, here's the thing. With all these emissions stuff and consumer diesels, and how do you get them to run clean while also making them drivable, while also making them livable for the average consumer? Now, don't get me wrong. If you're in a Ram 2500 with a 6.7 liter Cummins, you're not exactly the average consumer. But here's the thing. I think, are they willfully so if it's cheating software, it's willful, right? It's okay, well, we almost met the rules, but we can't. All right, they test at this RPM under this load. Let's just make it at this load. It's running crazy lean or something, right? So it's not spewing as much out. Honestly, we saw it with Volkswagen. Diesel cars aren't a big thing here, because diesel typically is more expensive than gasoline, even premium. Whereas over in like Europe and other parts of the world, diesel is about the same price as gasoline. So the fact that you can get an extra 50% out of the same volume of per gallon, say, makes a lot of sense for people. I don't know. I would like to read more into it. I would like to know what the testing is. I would like to know the margins at which they failed. because it comes down to another part of to me, it comes to the greater automotive conversation as a whole, and that is this a case of, are the emissions laws becoming unobtainably stringent, or is it, you know, a case of, oh shit, the Power Stroke is putting out 20 foot-pounds more than us. We need more power. Ah, crap, that makes us non-compliant, or like the ultimate dick measuring
Right.
contest that is between, Ford, Chevy, Cummins, Power Stroke, whatever. But I mean, most people don't realize is that Cummins, not only in Rams, as far as commercial truck, or I'm sorry, consumer-based trucks, they're in Nissans too. The
Right.
Titan XL.
They're in a lot of products.
So it's, like I said, it's about here. Why does anyone get the so I have two. We've talked about them. We've mentioned them. You saw Court and Lou in the track video that Rich was referencing earlier. They bought a 2500 Ram with the 6.4 liter gas engine, which is about 400 horsepower torque, and they didn't want the diesel. So it's just a question of, when you're getting these diesel, you're getting it because of towing, right? You're either getting it because of towing,
Right.
or it's whatever. At that point, it's the same reason why anyone gets a sports car. It's basically the redneck cock extension, for lack of a better way of putting it. But at any rate,
Right.
if the vast majority are getting it for commercial use, or they're towing a boat, or they're towing a trailer, or they're doing work with it, to me, that's different than Volkswagen doing their shit, because those are cars, right? Or SUVs. Little diesels that are just efficient, not work vehicles. And it just brings up the same thing that seems to be happening more and more and more. And that is electric by 2035. Miles per gallon of 50 by blah. Bah, 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 bah. Is this another case of rules being out of touch with the reality of the automobile?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's. Oh yeah.
Sorry.
So, no, it's okay. I don't know. There's some good points made in chat, and I'll read them off quickly. So Nate over on YouTube, thank you, Nate, for joining. What's up, brother? EBITDA is about 4.7 billion. Doug says quick Google search shows their profits around 5 billion in some recent years, so they lost about a third. Nate says. So I just did a really quick search as well. Let's see if I can actually find the profit margins. Total gross margin for the year looks like it bounced between 23.8 and 24.2, or right around there. Operating margin was about 10 to almost 12, and net margin was anywhere from like 7.3 to close to 9. It seems so. Yeah, so it seems like they lost about a third of their profits out of the profit margin. So they slapped them with a third of their full, a third of their take home, if you will, which is, it's significant, but it's not significant enough for me to say like, this is really going to hamper them. And there was a couple of comments made on the reel, I made on across the platforms like YouTube and Instagram and what have you, saying that you're siding with the EPA here, and I'm like, I was just reporting the news, and like, it doesn't make sense that I'm siding with the EPA. I'm not siding with the EPA. I'm not siding with Cummins either. I'm sort of just like telling everybody what's going on. But I was also saying that like, this is, if they really wanted to make an example out of them, because the accusation is very serious. They knowingly did this. And the fact that they settled, that's a huge word in this. They settled for $1.67 billion. Meaning when you settle for something, that's you're basically saying that you did it. So they settled on 1.67 billion. That is a huge thing, and they shouldn't be trying to skirt these laws because they're gonna find out. Obviously, they did, and they're slapping him with this huge fine because of it. But if they really wanted to make an example out of them, they would have slapped him for 2 or 3 times this and took their entire net for this year, or take home for this year. And obviously, here's the other thing: they're not going to just be like, "Hey, Cummins, give us $1.6 billion right now." That's not how these work. It'll be amortized over the next 5 to 10 years. They won't just say, because if they take away their take home profit margin, they're gonna put them under, even if it's just if they took 4 or 5 billion. Well, how are they going to pay everything this year? Not it's not a thing. So they'll be like, okay, well, you pay 200 million over the next 6 7 years, whatever it is. They won't just like take the money immediately. That's not how these work, especially with large corporations. The U.S. government bailed out companies. They're not going to just send Cummins down the tubes.
I mean, if you were here last week, we have government cheese because the U.S. government was bailing out dairy farmers.
That's right.
But here's the thing: it's what I hate is the fine, as opposed to doing it the correct way. And the correct way is, if let's say it's $1.6 billion, right? Well, instead of fining you that and then making you go fix it, how about you go fix it, and nobody who owns one of these vehicles that are affected and that were part of the cheat and all this other stuff, none of them, all the owners, they get the fix or whatever it is. And then now you have someone overseeing it saying, okay, this fix works on all the ranges. It's no longer cheat. It's emissions compliant and all of this stuff. Go out, fix it, make sure your customers are taken care of, make sure blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that someone who's gone and heavily modified theirs is part of this, but make them fix it and enforce it. And I'm not saying they're not doing that,
right?
But I could give two shits of whether or not you fine them, right? It's like fining a professional athlete for yelling at an umpire. Like, right?
Right. Who cares?
Who cares? Like, not for nothing, professional athletes just donate it to a charity, so it just comes off of their income for the year. Ooh.
Right.
So, like, to me, the fine, we're focusing on the wrong things. If they did something wrong and it was willful, okay, well, Johnny Commissions dude right here is going to be looking over your shoulder, examining what you have and telling you how to fix it. Now, as if it's a tune thing where you lean mixtures or whatever, blah, 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 fine, whatever. Every single one of these trucks comes in, they get a reflash, everybody's good to go. If it's something more nefarious than that, and that it's a physical part that has to be replaced, well, guess what? You're paying your mechanics to replace that part just like any other recall, and they're fixing the problem. Because at the end, like, you were a bad person. You only get to make $2 billion this year.
Oh no!
And where are we? If you sat here and not for nothing, a lot of times a fine hurts, right? No matter what it is. I mean, if I was to sit here and go, "Hey, Greg, I'm going to help myself to a third of your income from 2023," that would hurt you and you, or what have you, right? And I understand when we scale this up to billions. It's like, oh my gosh, they could only afford 2 super yachts. The horror. But at any rate, but if I sat here and said, okay, Greg, you done fucked up. We're going to fine you a little bit, but we're going to force you to go community service or fix the problem or work with, and there's going to be someone over your shoulder making sure you do it the correct way every single time. To me, that's more of a punishment, because how many of us have had that boss that is constantly over your shoulder looking at everything you do, and how much of a pain in the ass that is? And like, just from I don't want to say I'm not sitting here and saying we're going to emotionally fine these people. I'm not that sadistic, but hold them accountable. And now they have to, when they go and do something, it's not the, whatever, it's close enough. It's the, oh shit, I better get this right. And that's how you fix it.
Yeah.
And that's how you deter, power forward and power stroke saying, hey, we could do this. Yeah, but when I was over at Cummins, it sucked. Oh, maybe we shouldn't do that.
Right. Here's another point that is interesting that I wanted to make. The amount of hate that the EPA is getting for this, and the amount of hate that is spewed from a lot of the communities towards like going towards EVs and like I want my emissions and I want my ICEs and yada yada yada. This is sort of adding fuel to the fire for the diehards, the ICE diehards. Like it's just making Cummins more powerful in a way. There's a lot more people that are now on Cummins' side because of this. So it's gonna be interesting to see what sales are like for trucks specifically from a consumer standpoint over the next 1 to 2 years to see if they go up and people do start supporting them with their wallets in a way. I'm very interested to see like maybe a lot of old truck owners are like, oh, maybe you know what? It's time for that new one. I got to go support Cummins.
Right. Keep in mind, though, the Cummins engine option is like a 20-ish thousand. Like, it's one thing to sit here and be like, oh, the $5,000 engine upgrade. No, it's. I forget what Court and Lou were saying, how much more it is. It's like 10 to 20, somewhere in that neighborhood.
It's a lot, yeah.
So, we all like to think it's like, I'm going to support Cummins because I think they're getting screwed by the government and because the government's trying to take my guns. Fuck them. I'm going to go buy oh, shit. That's a lot more. I'm going to get a Cummins General. Damn, that's expensive too. Like, you know what I mean? You have that conviction
yeah.
until you look and it's like, and I didn't mean to put the redneck spin on because the Cummins truck is.
I mean, it is the target market. You're not wrong.
But it is and it isn't. Again, the people buying Cummins powered 3500 Rams are typically, you could see someone from the frickin' Hamptons towing their, pickup boat, right?
Right.
People, we're talking about people with things that can be towed kind of money, right?
Yes. Large cabin cruisers.
So here's the thing. I look at it from this standpoint, and I've kind of gone down this rabbit hole, so I won't really go in because we got some pretty cool other stuff to kind of talk about and what have you.
Yes.
But while is Cummins wrong? Yes. I'm not going to say they weren't. I'm not going to come to their defense, blah, blah, blah. However, there's a lot of parallels with another industry that I don't want to demag for, but where the government is overreaching and an agency which is supposed to enforce, not create law, but enforce, overreaching in some people's minds and pushing for the, we'll call it agenda of the day and the narrative that particular wants to sell. And I see that kind of coming more and more and more into the car sphere. Electric cars being crammed down our throat, emissions laws, aftermarket. Remember the whole hullabaloo with aftermarket stuff a couple of years ago, and everything. And I see that same kind of narrative kind of creeping in into cars to where now, at what point, I'm trying to make the comparison, but at what point do you run the risk of serving a significant amount of time in prison for whatever the automotive equivalent of a pistol brace is, right? Like the crap they try to pull with that.
Right.
And so I see that government overreach kind of trickling in. And that's why I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and say Cummins wasn't wrong. I'm not going to say they shouldn't, they should be allowed to do what they're doing. But I want there to be a defined line in the sand. I do not want, Cummins was doing this, so let's go check out what they're doing over at Duramax. Oh, what's this line of code? Oh, that's just to do, nope, it's an emissions, you know what I mean? And it's slowly,
right.
It's like, how do you stop people from rolling coal? Well, let's just make it harder for diesels to exist, right? And
right.
Once it gets there, then I'm gonna, then we have a major issue and everything like that. But
see, this is why we need to buy an F-Type for the channel now while we still can.
I literally told you to do that like an hour ago.
I know exactly.
I mean, either that or put a bigger turbo on the Polestar. The choice is yours.
No, I'm gonna. I choose death by V8.
I mean, some say that's a healthy beverage.
Yes. Smack the forehead. Let's get the sound bit. Could have had a V8.
I want to get that sticker and put it on your car, or a magnet so it's not.
Could have. You could have had a V8. That's not a bad. That's not a. That is a magnet I would rock.